The Legacy Files with Grant Cameron.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I have an exciting episode that Desta Barnaby, my assistant co-author over in Ontario in Snowville, is with me today. And what I want to talk about in Desta, I'm just going to go through this list, and this is something I worked on. I've talked to people about it lots of times, but I said finally I want to put a whole list together, and I have all but two here. And what the headline says is indicators that aliens may not be biological. This is this whole idea that in 1975 when I had the UFO sighting, it was clear to me this was an alien from another space, another solar system or whatever. And I always believed that. And I heard Jacques Vallée said, no, that's not true. I'd be very surprised if it turned out to be extraterrestrial. And then I thought he was nuts. And the more I go along, the more I follow Jacques Vallée that this is going to be a little more complex than biological aliens who got lost in space and ended up here. So let me go through the list. We're going to put them in some sort of book or article or something. I'm just going to go through them. Number one, distance. Everybody knows that one, that the distance is just too far for physical beings to go from one place to another. I won't go through that. They explicitly say they aren't aliens. So I've had a number of people that have confronted the alien, and the one that I'll just refer to is Sherry Wild, who said to Daw, who was her being, "What the hell's going on here? Are you an alien? What are you doing?" And he said, "No, that would not best describe who I actually am. I'm an etheric being on a mission in the cosmos for the Creator." So when people ask the aliens, they basically say no. Number three. They avoid answering where they're from. So people will say, "Where are you from?" And they'll say, "You wouldn't understand," or "Don't worry about it." And the response to that is, "What do you mean you wouldn't understand? I mean, if you're from Mars, what's not to understand? If you're from Zeta Reticuli, what's not to understand?" That means it's more than we're from another planet. That's why they say you wouldn't understand, or they don't want to talk about it. And the one that I always joke about is no hair. If I had the technology that aliens have, do you think I wouldn't try to get hair? I mean, they've got no hair. Like, why would they got no hair? They got the technology to get hair. They don't have any hair anywhere on their body. And in the American industry, it's 72 to 80 billion dollars a year is spent by men and women on hair. So, and yet they say, well, no, aliens aren't interested in hair. They would rather be all bald and walk around. This one's from David Jacobs from his book, The Secret Life, and they would do the what's called the mind scan. The being would come really close to their eyes and look in their eyes and see what was going on in there. They could tell what was happening in the past. And then David Jacobs would say to them, "Tell me, is he breathing?" And he said, everybody would say, "Nope, it's not breathing." And the question is, well, if he's not breathing, that seems to indicate it may not be a biological being. This one's also brought up by David Jacobs, very interesting. And we've got actually got a drawing that was done by Ron Johnson, who's actually an artist who drew his being. And I looked at it, it's exactly what they described. There's no bones, there's no tendon, and there's no muscles. So if you are a being and you are walking and you got like knees and elbows and stuff, you need tendons and muscles, and they don't. They're like stick people. They're like stick people with a head on them, with this giant head with big eyes, and otherwise they don't have any muscles or tendons, and they have no rib cage, they have no clavicle, they have none of that kind of stuff that people will describe. So is that really a biological being? They pass through walls. If you're a biological being, you can't pass through walls. But if you're forcing a person to dissociate in a room and you're taking their astral body out of the bed, then yes, if you're another realm, then the beings, yes, can go through the wall, and so can the people, because they're not going through as physical beings. They're going through as something else. So they can go through walls, which tend to indicate something's wrong here. If it's a biological being, how's it going through a wall? They change form. Jim Sparks, one of the first guys that came up with the idea of screen imaging. He talked about the fact that they were screen imaging all the time. They kept changing from one thing to another because they were trying to fool him. They were trying to force him to learn to write, and he was fighting them all the way. And the one time the guy came as a military guy, and he said, "You're not fooling me. I know you're a great. You're not fooling me. You're screen imaging. In fact, you haven't even got the right uniform on." And he said, as he said that, the uniform changed to the right uniform. So this kind of stuff would indicate that this is not a biological being. This is something more complicated. Their environments resemble near-death experience. I've talked about that in the last legacy files, I'll sort of leave that. But if you start looking at near-death experiences and abduction experiences, you see like it's almost identical, 360-degree vision, telepathy, plastic folding tables. Mike Clellan talked about the wooden table, and then there's one in a woman in a near-death experience talking about a folding plastic table with these beings sitting behind it. And Mike Clellan's beings were sitting behind a wooden table, wooden folding table. And you go like, this is crazy. I mean, if you're a being coming from another planet, what are you gonna have a folding plastic table? Come on, this is crazy. Uh, um, no one actually sees the abduction. I've known that one for quite a few years. Nobody actually sees anybody being abducted. Lack of clothes. I always say ghosts wear clothes. So why do aliens not wear clothes? And people go, yeah, I never realized that the alien didn't have any clothes on. For their whole life they've had this experience. They didn't realize the alien didn't have any clothes on. And then I ask them about sex organs. If it's a biological being, did it have sex organs? No, it didn't have sex organs. No, no, no. And they said, don't you think that was strange? Yeah, it is kind of strange. I never thought of that. Has no belly button. If you look at the alien autopsy video from 1995 that they claimed they hoaxed, that this is all a hoax, you'll see it has no belly button. So if you're going to hoax it, don't you think you should have put a belly button on it to make it look like a an actual being? You take a look at the hands and feet; they're very clear. That the nails, it's really well done. It's got no belly button. It's got no nipples on the alien autopsy video. And you get the whole thing about telepathy. So if it's a biological being, why does it have telepathy? Because telepathy, and they can move the telepathy to us. So if we're inside the ship, we're totally telepathic and they're totally telepathic, which would indicate that this is more than a biological being. It doesn't speak with his mouth. The mouth even doesn't go down into the throat. It doesn't appear to eat. It doesn't appear to sleep. It doesn't appear to drink anything. And they or they have that before. They exit through walls and through closets. Uh, um, some people are told there's engines, so the phenomenon is changing. So people in the 50s are told there's engines, and they're showing these engines inside the craft and how they work with the anti-gravity and stuff like that. And now they're saying, no, there's no engine inside the craft. So the craft is changing, it's morphing. The ships and the aliens are changing. The evidence is 260,000 sightings, and almost all the sightings are different. They're different types. They were asking Lakatsky in this interview from last November, why are they all different? He said, well, didn't figure that out. It's like just weird. And they can morph, they can change, which would indicate this is more than some sort of physical alien that's lost in space. Um, Go within yourself. I mentioned that before when they're asked to travel. When they are asked where they want to go, the being says to them, it is within you. Go within yourself. When you can imagine it, then we will go there," which tends to indicate this is not a physical type of thing, unless it's some sort of portal thing. But it's inside the ship, and it happens very, very fast, instantaneously, and it indicates there's some sort of consciousness thing going on. They exhibit omnipresence presence. They're able to sort of be all over the place at the same time. They know what's going on. They know who's having experiences. You can't hide from them. The appearances change across encounters. So if you have Chris Blesser, when he first saw the beings in 2007, when he was abducted, they were tall, 7 foot, bluish green beings. When he saw them in 2012, and they took him to see the lady, they were wearing hoods and they were etheric beings, like angels, glowing light inside these hoods. Dead people and pets appear on the ship, and this is the thing. So if you're coming from another star system, what the hell have you got somebody's dead pet on the ship for? I mean, how do you make this connection between knowing who the dead people are who are related to the people that you're abducting, and then putting those people back together? This makes no sense. Dead people and dead pets on board the ship. That indicates something more messaging is going on that are making people think, or something weird is going on when that kind of stuff is going on. The experiences describe clearly non-physical environments. Ron Johnson talked about that, where the LB took him first into a dark zone. Then he took him into a zone where he could hear his dead mother talking. And then the third one, he's in the spirit realm. And that's when he tells this famous story where he tells me, he said, I'm with my mother and we're in this field. You always hear this, the near-death experience people in the field, and LB's there, and the grass is beautiful and everything is the flowers and stuff. And there's this building, looks like a Mormon temple, and his mother and him go in, and he said, Grant, it was the weirdest thing. It was like 10 to 100 times the size inside the building as it was outside. And I said, that's weird. I mean, was it a UFO experience? Was it a UFO or is it a temple in the spirit world? Because near to people in the abduction experience will talk about the fact, like Chris Bledsoe, that it was 30 feet on the outside and inside it was as big as a football stadium. So you get this thing being bigger on the inside than outside in the near-death experience and also in the abduction experience. And you say, well, are you in the spirit world or are you in the abduction world? And this indicates something very strange is going on, that it's much more than some sort of experience from aliens from another planet. They don't age, which is one of the big ones. I asked um, Betty Andreasen and her husband. She saw her first beings. Both he and her saw the first beings in 1946. I said, Betty, you were 1946. You were a little girl. Now you're like 80 years old. You're a grandmother. Did the being ever get any older? And then there was this long pause, and then Bob Luca, her husband, said, no, but aliens live a long time. And you can get the pattern. You can go, people who have had lifelong experiences with aliens. You can ask them, did the being ever get any older? And the people will say, no, he never got any older. MIBs, James Lukatsky, a bizarre story. In his latest interview last November, he tells this bizarre story about MIBs. He had his own MIB experience, and that's where he says MIBs are real. We've confirmed this, and he tells us, I won't tell the MIB story, but you go back and listen to it. It's just bizarre. MIBs, if you're coming from another planet and you're exploring our planet and the plants and the leaves, what the hell do you need MIBs for? MIBs is this weird world where they want you to wonder what's going on. They want you to explore it. They want you to study it. And during your experience, you're going to suddenly realize there's a paranormal world that's outside the physical world, and you're going to learn something you didn't know before, that the world is much more magnificent and unexplainable than you could ever imagine. Past lives is another big one. If you're an alien from another planet, why are you appearing in the person's past life? 25% of people did the free survey who answered the question said, the alien that I'm dealing with, and there's usually only one alien that I'm dealing with on board the ship, that one was in my last life. So how did you happen to come from another planet, Zeta Reticuli, or wherever you're coming from, and you happen to be in the person's last life? That seems to indicate a spiritual thing rather than a physical alien from another planet. Near-death experience aliens, I sort of went through that. This whole idea that aliens appear in near-death experiences. Weird skin. This is from David Jacobs as well. And the way he reports it, um, no blemishes on the skin, um, soft, rubbery, plastic quality. The skin is extremely smooth, without pores, hairs, freckles, bumps, ridges, discolorations, warts, moles, scratches, wrinkles, or any other common elements found on skin. Then you start to wonder, is this actually a biological being, or is it some sort of created being, some sort of screen image thing that you're seeing that sort of looks like an alien, and when you take a close look, it's like a lucid dream, the old idea that you're asleep, and that when you suddenly realize the mistake in the dream, that your dead father's in the dream, or you got six fingers or something like that, you suddenly realize there's a problem in the dream, and that's when you wake up. You go, this is weird. How come the skin looks like this? And you suddenly realize I may be dreaming. This may be something that is not real, that's just being shown to me, that it's not a real being. Why are they here? Why would what I say is, why would aliens from all across the universe come here to study or to help us? We're not planning to go and help anybody else. We may be planning systems, but they all seem to be here, and they're worried about the nuclear weapons. They're worried about the environment and stuff like that. Why would you come all this way to do this kind of stuff? It indicates a higher realm and a higher mission rather than just sort of getting lost in space and space explorers from another planet. No eyelids. You probably heard this one before. And eyelids clean the eye from dust and stuff like that. And they got these huge eyes, but they got no eyelids. Um, the guide, this is this idea where I wonder because when you go to people, I even go now, I don't question them about the beings. They say these two beings come in, there's three beings, and they take me on board the ship, and then I'm on board the ship, and then the tall gray is talking to me, and I always say, okay, so what's the name of the guy you're dealing with? And everybody always has a name of the guide. who they're the person, and you start wondering, is this a being or is this a guide? Is this all a makeup thing? Because why? How do you suddenly talk to the same person all the time, and this person, all the other aliens aren't talking to you? Only one alien is talking to you, and it's almost like a spirit guide where it's telling you what to do, how to improve your life and stuff like that. And they all have English names, which is really weird. Like why would you come across and then have an English name? They're all have English names, and everybody knows who their person is. They You can just bypass and say who you're dealing with on board the ship, and they'll have a name of the person that they were dealing with. On this whole idea, I think Desta see my PowerPoint where I show grays. People say, "Oh, this is grays. They all look the same." And so I take 20 different grays from different Betty Andreasen, Whitley Strieber, Betty Hill. I put all these grays side by side on a PowerPoint, overlapping each other. And you take a look and you realize none of the grays are the same. They don't even look in close to being the same. So that's the thing is you get all these things that differ. And I guess I'll just end with this quote here. Um, Kit Green. This is the key one. Kit Green is the guy that if you have an experience as a high-ranking U.S. official, you go and you get put in front of Kit Green. He's the guy that's doing all the work on the tests on the people get injured by UFOs and stuff like that. And here's what he said, and this basically blows the whole ET thing out of the water. He said, one of the most interesting items relating to this phenomenon is the theory as to why experiencers witness the same event will perceive different details from their perspective, and in some cases, a whole set of different circumstances and experiences from just lights to more information detail of something physical and real. For some witnesses, the appearance to what is being perceived and what really is somehow becomes fully disturbed, and in some cases, unrecognizable. Also, it is as if from certain perspective or distance or point of view or relation to what is being perceived, a witness will interpret the events of the experience based upon his or her own perceived views and beliefs. For example, if a witness was inclined to believe in extraterrestrials, then that is what he or she would see or experience. In reality, what the witnesses are actually viewing is nothing like the different interpretations that existed in each of their minds. And again, it can appear from different from each of the witnesses' perspectives present to the same event. In effect, the phenomena projects itself by confusing the perceptions of the witness to what it actually is, in that it whatever appearance is being interpreted seems to be projected into the minds of the witnesses, and their interpretations are based upon each individual's belief system or worldview. And Desta, you and I had this conversation numerous times about the fact that when you look out into the world, everything is just a bunch of waves. It's all just vibrating waves, and that it goes in through our senses and consciousness. The mind presents this field, and that you're going to get a lot of cases like in the case with the 2014 2015 Zendras at Shasta, where all the witnesses saw a physical being in 2014 and 2015. The same beings were holograms. You could see the trees through them. And I talked to the interpreter in the 2015, and I said, "Did you see the hologram?" And he said, "There was no hologram." I said, "Yeah, it was a hologram. Everybody saw the hologram." Let me tell you, Grant, I was close enough to see the lines in his face. It was not a hologram. It was a real being, and it was an extraterrestrial. And this is this whole thing about what do we actually perceive. When you start looking at reality, you start to realize that what you see is not what it's perhaps not what you think you're seeing, that it's all these waves and it's all perception, and it just sort of throws you off that you are part of what you're seeing, that you are interpreting this kind of stuff. And even Barbara Streisand's stepson, you met with him, and he made the quote, and I'll leave with this. When we come into your world, we go into your brain and we see what's in your brain. And it is with that we make a message, we make a lesson. That's all we can do. We have no other choice.
Perfect. Thanks, Grant.